As you know, this is Vedanta series question answer. There are no questions, there are no answers. So I hope you have some good questions. So we start off with our usual prayer for teacher and student. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Astoma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. As usual, I'll mute my microphone in anticipation of suitable questions.
Hi, Swami. I do have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
I was doing yoga on Friday, yes. And while the yoga practice, she was carrying out some exercises for the second point of consciousness, and I felt so much sensation, the energy, and there's something that popped into my head, and it was a question, and it was, I need to, like, what is going on in here? Like, I need to find out what is going on, because it's so referred to, like, the creative center, the sexual center, the divine center. And she, while she was doing it, she was referring it into the divine center, and it really makes so much sense, because it's where also women, like, can conceive children and stuff, you know. And I just need to ask you this question, because normally she does a Q&A, but she didn't that day, and I said I need to ask Swami what is going on really in there, because there's something I don't know, and I want to find out if I am able to find the same energy worldly and also divinely. That means that there's something in here that is awakening that. So that's kind of a little bit my question. I don't know if it's clear.
So I'm not quite clear what you mean by the second stage, I think you said, of consciousness. Can you explain that?
Yes, the second chakra, Swami.
Okay. Well, I suppose first we have to define what we mean by chakra. And so I'm going to ask a counter question. What do you understand by the term chakra?
For me, it's a point of consciousness.
Okay, so chakra we can define as a level of consciousness or a layer of consciousness. And so earlier on, I was describing something like an analogy of a white, bright light with filters on. And so while we say layers of consciousness, really what we mean is consciousness itself has layers imposed on it. We can look at it that way. It's a much better way to look at it. So let us use this example. There's a bright white light, and you put, say, an orange filter on, or let us say, yes, any color filter will do, orange filter, and somebody comes into the room. They don't know that you put a filter on. Their interpretation is, what a beautiful orange light there is. And the light is quite bright because it's only one filter. But supposing you put another filter on, let's say a red filter, you might get something like a pink color coming. And somebody not knowing any better would say, oh, what a beautiful pink light, very soothing. But the brightness of the original light is there, but it's dimmed. And it's the same light coming through, only various filters. Now you can do that with more or less every color of the spectrum and put a filter on each one. By the time you put about 5 filters on or so, 6 filters, the light will be extremely dull, but it will still be visible. There'll be still some radiation coming through each one of the filters and coming through the combination of all the filters. And then supposing you put an extra filter on, supposing you put a filter on which dulls the light so that it is visible, and yet the brightness is gone. You might call this that level of consciousness, which is the human body, the human person comprising of physical body, the personality, the behavior, the psychological inheritance, the baggage, the relationships, the difficulties, the reactions, the actions, the problems, the whole of the psychological makeup that relates to all the objects and gives us problems. So when we get away, when we take that ultimate filter away, then in yogic language, it means we are now stimulating the universal energy. We are stimulating it, and we're giving it a new direction. And the new direction, the effect will be to remove each one of the filters one by one. Now, this is a very different way of looking at it, because it's taking consciousness and putting these filters on. But our view is the opposite. Our view is that we are discovering more and more about the light, representing consciousness. And so chakras is the yogic representational language of saying, let us reveal each layer and level of consciousness. And how do we do this? We do this through worship of God, love of God. This is also called awakening the coiled up thing, which is Kundalini. This potentiality is being revealed. The more we uncover, the more the potentiality is that comes out. In other words, the more of the light we see. Until we can see the full blaze of light, a yogic language for this is Shushumna. It's not exactly a chakra, and the language is pictorial, it's creative, it's designed to be a little esoteric, it's designed to stimulate the imagination, and so the language being used is lotuses. It's not that there are literally lotuses inside your spine, and you can use the spine in the representation of it, and there's no doubt that every part of the person will be a reflection of a previous part. Let me try to explain a little bit more. What we call the physiological body is a gross expression made from yesterday's bananas and milk of a subtler body, which we call the energetic body or the morphological body. So the Taittiriya Upanishad is very good at describing these, what we call koshas, sheaths. There's the physical sheath made from food. There's the energetic body. There's the psychic body, the body made from mind. There's the body made from buddhi or intellect that has a shining component. It seems to be intelligent. And yet it's just reflecting intelligence, just as the filter is reflecting the light. And then there's that which is made from bliss, Ananda Maya Kosha. And then there is the real consciousness itself. So while we can describe these as layers and levels of consciousness, all really from another point of view, they are filters that are being taken off. In Swami Vivekananda's Raja Yoga, he tells us really we have to uncoil this. The Kundalini has to be aroused. Kundalini is the feminine form of that which is coiled up. In other words, it's pure energy. But the highest form of energy that we have is psychic energy, otherwise called thought. And it is the thought movement that has the effect of either putting us into ignorance or putting us into a state of revelation. And normally speaking, it won't be instant revelation, it'll be progressive revelation. And it is done systematically with a guided movement that we call yoga. And the easiest way of doing it is love of God, actually, because it evokes all the emotions that we have normally diverted toward anger or hatred or likes or dislikes, and other reactions such as love And when that's elevated, it becomes spiritual energy and becomes an opening factor. And then the evidence of that for us is more joy, more delight. And on the other side of it, less stress, less connectedness with the things which drag the mind down, elevating the mind. What is the technical process of doing it? Well, this whole universe is made, as you know, of these three evolutionary components. We call these gunas, binding elements, sattva, rajas, and tamas. And so when we are able to acknowledge at any particular moment what is the state of the mind that we're in at any given moment, supposing we find the mind is dull and lazy, then we can recognize it, and without analyzing it overly, we can simply take that. If we analyze it, we tend to drag the mind down even further. And it goes from what a glory to what a pity, and the what a pity increases, and the tamasic variety, inertia, also increases with it. We call this psychological depression. How to get out of it? We find some motivating thing and shift our gear up to the next level, which is rajas. We become energetic. Now, the characteristic of rajas and tamas will be that ultimately it will be pain-bearing, because the orientating strategy will be my own egoistic position, my own sense of individuality, and that intrinsically will be pain-bearing. Selfishness is pain-bearing. Then when we elevate that, we elevate it up to the virtues, the noble values, strength and truth and beauty and goodness and love and harmony. We put that into the next gear, and we play a game like that. We can call it the game of guiding thought. Otherwise, we can also call it meditation. But there are two types of meditation that I'm describing. One is sitting and doing this process in a very connected way, in a very concentrated way. And our normal waking life, which comprises over 99% of our existence, our conscious existence. And we can play this game of guiding thought, noticing at every moment what condition the mind may be in, and using a gear lever called attention, and shifting the attention up to a higher value by using insights that is revealed from our philosophy. For example, if you look at components within what we typically put as nature, forgetting that we are part of nature, let us say it's a tree. Having seen 1,000 trees, we may dismiss it and say, a tree, so what? Then where's our attention? Our attention can be shifted now if we don't take hold of it or recognize it or become aware of it. If we allow it to wander, then it wanders not in one direction, it wanders in multiple directions. It is called a scattered mind. Our mind is in a scattered condition. And then that means then that it is able to orientate itself around to an individuality which probably may say, poor me, what a pity, or orientate toward the world and say, what a disaster. But there are other alternatives. We can take the example of a tree, we can observe it correctly, and we can trace the tree from its external visual component, even to its tactile component of touch. And we can then get an experience, what a glory, through the tree. Because we can see that when you strip away all the external layers, that is, what happened, what was there before the tree. Or what was there before the tree? You can put it poetically, God stood there and wove a tree around itself. And there we have tree and entered into it. This internal controller, this inner controller, wound this entity around itself and entered into it. Same with the human body. We can take the human body and the human being, if you will, as a series of layers, just as everything we find is a series of layers. In a tree, we find the external bark. Then internally, we'll find the wood. Internal to that, we'll find the sap. Internal to that, we'll find a component, mysterious component called life. The knowledge of how to get nutrients from the soil and draw it up and distribute it in a way that gives us a wonderful display of branches and leaves and flowers and fruits. But it all started from an inner component. When we look for the internal aspect of anything that we see or hear or touch or taste, anything available to the sense organs, we can trace it systematically and we can there see its origin. And then, what a pity, from a wandering mind, it gets transformed into what a glory, and gives us an internal shift upwards. This internal shift upwards, this internal sense of rapture, is called Kundalini unfolding. Our inner energy unfolding and expressing itself. And the question then is how to sustain it. We sustain it through repetition. Repetition we call practice. And we can also call it Abhyasa Yoga. That means taking elements of our forgetfulness and bringing our attention back to remembrance of not only who we are fundamentally, but what is the fundamental essence of everything that we see in terms of situations, scenes, people, places, events. So the art of doing that constantly will have the effect of unfolding our infinite potential. And that unfolding is called the rising up of the Kundalini, that is, taking our energy, drawing it inwards, and opening up new possibilities of discovery within ourselves. And that is really called opening up our consciousness. There is absolutely nothing physical about these chakras. But no doubt, the subtle filter, if you want to put it that way, will filter through, using the same analogy, to every single layer, just as when we have 3 or 4 colored filters on a light, the combined effect of these filters will come through in what we see in the visible spectrum. And when we remove one filter, it will look different, but it will still be a combination of all those things. And that is why these chakras will be actually combinations of tattvas. Tattvas are elements. Let us take, for example, the yogic idea of the lowest one, Muladhara. That is a concentrated root where our potentiality in yogic pictorial language sits and is coiled up. By concentrating with the full capacity of our imagination, that is the yogic way, because imagination will be the stimulating tool that we have, if you like, the stimulating avenue for this unfoldment. So that is why the yogis have given wonderful descriptions of the symbolism and colors and the various forms and the various bija mantras on every petal, formed like a lotus flower with face downward normally. When stimulated, it faced upwards and then starts like a flower, unfolds. That pictorial language is used. And naturally, it'll affect every single other covering. And that means every single kosha. So when it's opened up, it'll affect even the physical, no doubt, and all the areas around the physical that correspond to that area. Yes. So the instinctual or the inspirational discovery of the yogis will somehow translate these discoveries into useful meditative language, so that when we meditate in that systematic way, it'll have the effect of opening up, as it were. But that's the one way of looking at it. There's another way of looking at it, is removing a filter. So we can, and we do it systematically using the full capacity of our imagination. And it helps to go back to original texts on this. We were discussing earlier original texts, because people have gotten hold of these texts and not understood it properly. Firstly, because these texts called the Tantras or the Agamas are written in symbolic language as a protection against foreign invasions. And so the greatest authority that we know of on this would be Sir John Woodruff, who was 18th century High Court judge in Kolkata in India. And 19th, I think probably 19th century. So he wrote under the pseudonym Arthur Avalon. And he writes The Serpent Power, in many books he writes, because he's taken initiation into this tantric system, this yogic tantric system, bothered to study Sanskrit, and studied all 64 tantras with no ambiguity whatsoever, being taught by a teacher. And so much of his books, the introductions, are gentle, persuasive, tactful critiques on other interpretations of these chakras, which have come through to us in New Age culture. So that you go to somebody, say, who practices Reiki or something, and they say, oh, your third chakra is out or something like that. That's absolute nonsense. It's purely a way of describing a progressive state of devolution. Devolution means we have come to this position of our own individuality through an unfolding, an evolution, a biological evolution. And how do we get back? We can say, let's go the other way. Now, there's a very useful image of that. It is called the Sri Chakra, a series of interlocking multiple triangles that, if we move from the center outwards, it's the story of evolution in all its complexities. And if we go from the outside inwards to the center, where the bindu is, the point is, this is our progress back to our origin. And meditation is to do both things. Meditation is going from the outside progressively inside to our pure origin of pure being, and then going back again and taking another position. You can imagine it like a circle. We'll start from one point, go inwards. Then as we go out, we take another theme, go inwards, until we come to that point where all the breath gets suspended. So a kind of involuntary kumbhaka in yogic language, where everything gets suspended and we experience pure being. And when we start our meditation process, it may be for a split second. As we practice it, it gets longer, longer, longer. We become more familiar with it. So that meditation, we understand by definition, would be where there is only one single thought in the mind. And when even that thought goes, we call this samadhi. And in the yogic language, it means the full blaze of the totality. And we call this sahasrara, thousand petal lotus. It's not that there are flowers inside you. It's all pictorial language designed for meditation purposes. Designed so we can use the full capacity of our creative imagination. You see, our attention easily goes to an area that is delightful and joyful and engaging, that catches our attention. And even children will have it. How to make sure that we can go and do household chores and leave the infant entertained. We give all kinds of different toys that have the capacity to evoke a sound, something that squeezes and makes a noise, and something that the child can, in a tactile way, explore with the hands, lick it with the tongue even, and listen to it with the ear, explore this object, this new object, a kind of revelation, a discovery. And because the child is discovering these things for the first time in this life, The child is thoroughly entertained. See how clever a child is, how absorbent a child is. Within 2 years, a child has learned a new language, complete new language. We struggle in adulthood to learn such a thing. So maybe 2 years is not enough for us, even shorter than that for some children. A whole brand new language has been learned. So a child is like a sponge. It means the attention is being occupied continuously. This is the way we discover things. So also in adulthood, the way we discover things, and we can use it on every level. We probably need to learn something new every day just to keep our intellectual alertness going. We probably need to look and enjoy something artistic every day to keep our sense of culture going. And so we're keeping our thinking process going, we're keeping our analysis process going, we're keeping our cultural and artistic process going. We're making a nice all-around person, what we can call loosely work-life balance. We are being an all-rounded person that is promoting, in biological terms or neurological terms, 2 sides of the brain. Actually, they're more than that, because we can divide the brain into quarters. We can say there's a forebrain, an aft brain, a left side, a right hemisphere. We can even say there's a lower brain, an upper brain. And we know from our experiments in kinesiology that visual accessing, along with certain stimulations, will stimulate different parts of the brain and make us feel different. And when we understand there's a difference in these hemispheres, particularly left and right hemispheres of the brain, it's important to integrate these 2 sides and make sure they function as they're supposed to be functioning. And the only way to do that is through stimulation. Now, there's something now that we call neuroplasticity from experiments from London taxi drivers. And the taxi drivers are given new routes to learn, and then their brain is studied and they find new avenues. Now, this concept is not new, because in Swami Vivekananda's commentary on Patanjali Yoga Sutras, he tells us of creating new avenues in the brain. It's like, the brain has grooves, if you like, in the gray matter, and these are like streets. And when we take something new, a new idea, a new direction. Now, in yogic language, this new direction is called awakening the Kundalini. Our infinite potential is being awakened progressively. Come on, wake up, wake up. And all our energy that is normally dispersed in anxiety, doubt, fear, worry, is all now being drawn in and rechanneled into what a glory, and what a beautiful discovery, what joy there is. And we can only get that by using the faculty of attention and allowing it or steering it to alight on something that is interesting. Now, if you've seen 1,000 trees before, the tendency might be to dismiss it and say, I've seen that before, so what? Nothing new here. So there's the example, of course, of the student left alone and the teacher says, here's a flower, please tell me everything you know about this flower. And the student has adopted this dismissive attitude. A flower, so what? I've seen thousands of these things. What's there to tell? Anyway, the teacher says, I'll be back. And the teacher's gone. But 30 minutes go by and the teacher still didn't come back. And then half an hour, 1 hour goes by, 2 hours. Eventually the student, from sheer boredom means the attention, the faculty of attention, wants to move. It doesn't want to remain dull, doesn't want to remain imprisoned in dullness. It wants something new to alight on. And so, out of sheer boredom, the student starts looking at the flower more carefully. Out of sheer boredom, starts counting the petals. Oh, maybe there are no standard things on every flower. And why is the color as it is? And how is the color different? And it's not just one color. When I study the petal, I see it goes from one deep color and goes out, and there are lines on the petals that I just noticed. And when I look at the petals and when I look at the leaves, I see these are reproductions of some basic structure, the stem and its branches. And so every cell is a reproduction of a previous cell. And then I see, okay, what is the shape of the leaf? Why should it be this shape? Perhaps when rain falls on it, it acts like a funnel, so it doesn't get saturated. It takes what it needs and goes off. Excess water gets drained off. And I notice the sun doesn't stay in the flower doesn't stay in the same position. It tends to orientate itself around the sun and move with the sun. How does it know where the sun is? Why would it do that? There's a process, photosynthesis. There's a means of, through the chlorophyll of the leaves, taking the energy of the sun and transforming this. Now, the more you explore, the more you realize, I don't know much about this flower. There's much more to know. Hours together, days together. Eventually the teacher comes back. Well, I'm sorry, I never finished studying it. I have much more to say. I'll tell you what I know, but I'm sure it'll take days and days and days to explore the full glory of what is a flower, because it's not just the flower. The flower itself, the inside, acts as a platform, and bees can land on it. And it's a way of distributing. It's a way of propagating. And it's also a way, and that now leads me to a study of bees also. They take this pollen, and from this, through their regurgitation, they manufacture this glorious thing called honey, and we munch and crunch on it, and it gives us energy. And so the whole thing comes in. What a glorious drama is being played out. And what would I have missed if I'd simply dismissed it? And so we come back to the formula I often say, and I'm happy to repeat it. I'm not shy to repeat it. And that is, we have to learn the art of observing something properly, noticing its internal glory, and its external expression is the expression of its internal glory. And the most static thing, the most fundamental basis, the blissful base that is within it, is expressed through all these other things that I see and experience. And then, when I start to do this, my observation leads me to a point of appreciation. What a glory! An internal shift is felt, a sense of wonder, a sense of adoration, a sense of thankfulness comes up within me and lasts until my attention says, okay, now let me take another thing, because you're seeing things in many different places, everywhere, in many different moments. And every moment, that is a kind of immeasurable moment, a measurable point in time that is so small, even smaller than a second. But let's take the unit as a second. And in each second, something different comes in terms of thinking. And in each series of those moments, we are able to engage with the world that seems to be external to us. And there we will see God. There we will find God. We can't sit and say, I'm here, where is God? An absentee God is there, so let me be an atheist now. No, you missed the glory. And the glory occurs in this moment in time. We miss it if we dwell on the past. We miss it if we dwell on the future. We catch it when we tune in to the presence now. Here, now, and when we find it here and now, we find it joyful, we find it blissful. If we are able to accumulate those moments of joy in sequence, then our whole life will change if we learn the habit of doing this. And that will reflect on the whole psychophysical, that will find its thrill in every single cell of the body. It will be an unfolding, and the unfolding has to be a permanent unfolding, because if we come across it, stumble across it once or twice, then the effect is gone. And when the effect is gone, the progress is gone, and forgetfulness comes in. In other words, old habits come in. So we have to develop a new habit. And so it's not just a moment of, as it were, unfolding one layer of consciousness called a chakra. It has to be part of our permanency, has to be part of our second nature that ultimately becomes our first nature. So it is a whole process. This whole process is really, in terms of the description of the chakras, we can call it Kundalini Yoga, we can call it, but of course, it is because we're employing our hands and our will, called Karma Yoga. We're employing our emotions, called Bhakti Yoga, the most powerful way. We're employing our imagination and our feelings. And this is called meditation. We're employing all of these faculties. We're employing our intellect, our reasoning, the capacity to observe something and see that something else is there behind it, as it were, coming through, flowing through it. This is the process of Jnana Yoga. Process of Jnana Yoga, process of discernment, is not just saying it is not this, but also asserting, it is this also. It is this permanent entity flowing through. You say, lead us from the unreal to the real. There's the real. It's not just all unreal. That's only one side of the equation. Often the process in Jnana Yoga is referred to as a progress of neti. It's not this, it's not this. But what's missing in that description is, then if it's not this, what is it? And then we go away from the word this, and we see the word that. Tat tamasi, thou art that. And so that is part of the process too. It is the discovery, not just the elimination. It is a dynamic process that leads us to progressive discovery. So I hope I answered this question.
Yes, Swami. I was just wondering because, now I understand why now when I pray, I feel it different as well. And I feel it in a different way. And my whole life, well, my life, if you could call it this way, is very different. Why? My question is, for me, I think my, let's call it issue at this point to understand is so sacred. Why do people, why is it designed also for evolution? Sort of evolution, but it's so divine. How can you, for me, sexuality is so in the world. It's completely out of divinity, but it's also the point for sexuality and creativity. So how do you link all these steps for me that are like so, let's say, shared away in one together? That's what calls my attention. I don't know if I make sense.
Could you repeat that? I didn't fully catch it.
Yes.
Yeah, a little slower. Thank you. Yeah.
So, okay, I do understand what you said, Tamaji. But when I look at the different ways that is defined, like let's say the creative center, then we also have the divine center, which is, for me, makes more sense to define it that way because it goes into the direction you explained. So that's how I understand it. And then there's also the sexual center as well. But for me, creativity, obviously imagination goes as well with divinity. But if I also need to link the sexual center with it, it's like my mind frazzles a little, because sexuality for me, the way I see it, is so worldly. Yeah, as in what it is really. It is so worldly, it's so human. I don't know if I'm explaining this way. So how can you link that into something so deep? I don't know if I'm making sense.
Well, there's a misunderstanding amongst people who think they know or understand what is loosely described as Tantra. Let me try and explain. Tantra is an umbrella term. It covers an enormous ground. So Ramakrishna, for example, was a Tantrika. All the Hindu worship is Tantric worship. That is asserting the positivity and value of the world itself. So in other words, you cannot make this division that there is the world and there is spirituality. And in Ramakrishna's language, it's two sides of the same coin. On the one side is the Nitya, the eternal. On the other side is the Lila, the play. Now, most people, let me step back a little bit. There was a question that was given to me yesterday afternoon. I attended a function. And one person asked me, he said, so the Buddha, was he right to walk away and renounce his wife and family and all the rest of it? And I said, well, there are two types of aspirants. You can say that one is the renunciant type like that, but the vast majority, their spiritual path, we're all on a spiritual path, the spiritual path will be that of the householder, or that engaging in so-called normal activities. And the only difference then is to transform those activities into something sacred, because there is nothing except the divine which is there. I was discussing earlier this morning, the Vedanta philosophy is extremely simple. It says there's only one existence. We call this existence Brahman. Secondly, the quintessence in you, which we call Atman, literally self, that is one and the same with that one existence. And there is Mithya, that is, there is this apparitional universe, that is, this relative universe that comes and goes. Now, that's all fine in principle, but it's not our experience. Our experience is individuality, dividedness, and so on. So we have to get from our divided experience to our absolute being, the principle. How do we get from the one to the other? We have to take as available all the resources around us. Sexuality is one of the resources, by the way. And eating is one of the resources, by the way. And sleeping is one of the resources, by the way. And we can translate that into earning a living. We can translate that into the original creative urge as a procreative urge. So that there's absolutely nothing that is not spiritual if you look at it in this way. And that is the other side of the coin, that is the lila. Nitya on the one side, the eternal. Lila on the other side, which is the play. So we play the game well, and we learn to enjoy it well because we spiritualize it. And those practitioners of the Tantra, in the sense that they are taking taking a life-affirming position, not a life-denying position. They're not saying, the world is bad, let me get away from it. I was in an area, when was it, in the summer, in the south of France, was an area of the, now the name has escaped me, somebody would tell me what the name was, but it was a sect that really strongly felt that the world is bad and needs to be renounced, done away with, basically. And it is evil, that extreme position. What are those people called? There was a big inquiry over it, a big war that took place.
The Qatar, Swami.
Sorry?
The Qatar.
Thank you so much. Yes, the Qatars. Thank you. So it was the Qatars, okay. So they were a world-denying sect, no doubt. Their way was valid, no doubt. All ways are valid in a sense. But you see, for the ordinary person, so-called, the person who cannot do that, is there a way? Yes. Look at the world, in other words, see the universe and see the world as God sees it. Stand on God's throne. Now, according to the biblical texts, God made the world and saw that it was good. How is it that we possibly see it as bad? We're looking at it from our individual way, from an individual point of view. That's not really the way to see things. As soon as we shift our position, then we look at life in a very different and much more positive way. And we see that everything is life is fulfilling. So we have to learn to see God fully in everything. When we do that, our automatic reaction will be adoration in everything. And life would be a great joy. So if you can hold on to that vision, even theoretically, you can also practice it fully. So our difficulty is we are seeing partial elements, not seeing the totality. And the more we tune our sense and our attention into the wonder and glory of this universe as it is, then every activity has the potentiality of being a spiritual activity. But it depends how we view the world. If we view it as a creation with defects, something like a system of holes and defective traps that have to be filled in. You see what I always say? God made the world, but it wasn't good. He made it defective, and he put holes in there, and he made a foolish thing about it and did a very haphazard job, and now we have to fill all the holes in for him. And maybe God himself will do it. What is your job? Lord, I'm here in heaven. I want a series of question-answer sessions, please, just to fulfill my curiosity. Why did you make so many holes in the universe? Oh, it's so that I can fill them the next cosmic day. And then what do you do the following day? Oh, I make more holes. Well, what kind of job is that? What kind of being is that, making holes and filling them in? And what would our silly occupation be, seeing that there are defects and trying desperately to struggle against filling them in and making them perfect and complete? That would be a foolish endeavor. So we were talking earlier on about two understandings. And recent talks I gave, I was referring to them, that there is one way of thinking, that is to say that we are sinners, that we are weak, that we are defective, and we need rescuing from an extra cosmic source. Let us say the blood of Jesus or something. And we need to be pulled up by something external. Otherwise, we have no hope. Well, if that's our condition, then we will always be in a distrustful situation, a desperate begging situation. We'll always be begging, please lift me up, please lift me up, please save me, please save me, please save me. But our Vedantic position is not like this. You are already full and free and perfect. And you are expressing yourself. You're expressing it in every movement. When I give a Hatha Yoga exercise class, at the beginning, as a preparation, I say, you're not here to get anything. You're here to express the health you already have. So please enjoy it. Express the health you already have. Then life becomes a joyful expression of what all is already there and becomes an unfolding of your infinite possibilities, your infinite potential. It's a much better way of looking at it. Then why do we appear to be bound? If we are free, why do we feel bound? Well, it's because obstacles are in the way. What is the remedy? Please remove these obstacles and do it systematically. And the first thing in doing that is to say, I am confident that with my resources, these obstacles can be dealt with. I just have to acquire the playful skill. I have to engage in the play of life, and I have to express all the glory of my full capacity that I have, including my physical capacity. Many, many years ago, I read a Reader's Digest article, and the purport of it was the wonder of physical health is not remedying it. It's not the corrective aspect. It's actually the health you already have. Then it went through a whole series of wonders in the human body, starting from a teardrop. A teardrop is effective. It has Lysol chemical, which acts as a germ killer. It is effective as a bactericide, even if it's diluted in a bucket of water containing, which is 20-liter capacity. The skin itself is a germ killer. Otherwise, your hand would fall off. You'd have a permanent kind of leprosy. But the germ itself is the hand itself is a germ killer. When you cut yourself, within moments, the body organizes white cells and knits together this wound. And before you know it, you have a scab over it. And that scab itself starts disappearing. See how these forces, defense forces, are mobilized very quickly, instantaneously. The body knows how to convert raw materials into energy. What a wonderful thing it is. Even if foreign material gets past, saliva itself is a germ killer. If you have a wound on your leg and a dog comes and licks it, there's a great chance that that will heal quickly because saliva is a germicide. And even if things get past there, you have hair-like things, cilia, that can take the foreign material and make you cough it out. And if it gets further than that, hydrochloric acid is sitting there in the stomach, dealing with it. Nothing can pass that. And if it gets into the bloodstream, then millions and billions of antibodies are there to surround it and deal with it. And in dealing with it, you call it sickness. Actually, sickness or disease, in that sense, is a cure. The body is curing itself. The nose runs. Yes, the body is mobilizing to get rid of foreign material. Antibodies are there. What are antibiotics? Just indicating to the antibodies, this is where the problem area lies. That's all. And of course, antibiotics will also have its own side effects, as any chemical component has that is non-organic. So with all of this, how can we possibly fall sick? Well, human stupidity does it, largely speaking. Human stupidity in the sense of, living in crowded areas that are unhygienic. We know that in large populations of fish, which are dense populations, then viruses come along and correct the whole thing. And we, in the human species, we say, oh, it's a tragedy. The COVID is a tragedy. The Black Death came along, carried by rats, and we can trace, for example, from I think it's Plymouth onwards, the exact tracing of how the Black Death, how the plague, bubonic plague, spread from village to village to village, and people thought that it's carried in water. They didn't think it was carried in air. It was a good excuse to consume alcohol, of course. But you see, a large proportion of the entire European population was completely wiped out. Possibly more than 2/3 was wiped out. And the whole population decimated like that. But revived. Now this collectively is what we call nature. And we collectively call this mother. We say Mother Nature. Mother Nature knows what it's doing. And this is the key also to natural health. The body knows how to cure itself if obstacles are removed from it and left free. So this is the glory of what we call life, and is worthy of full celebration of it, and can be seen to be a divine expression displayed in the world. This is what we call lila. We cannot divide the world into, spirituality, good, the world, bad. No, there's no difference. You see, God made the world and saw that it was good, but we have to add, God made the world from itself or himself. And that is why it's good. There are no two. What we call the world, with its dividedness, its seeming fragmented God. And the mind is the fragmenter. The mind fragments this one single absolute entity into all these apparent divisions through the media of the sense of passing time and the sense of spatial awareness. What a glory. It is this outlook that opens up this energy, this Kundalini. Swami Vivekananda puts it like this: the yogi alone has the Sushumna open. That is, the whole range of consciousness is open. In other words, the whole totality is available. But what do we mean by the yogi? It is that person who adopts some form of systematic discipline that takes the attention and changes its course from the outside to the inside. And when this Sushumna current opens and begins to rise, we get beyond the senses. Our minds become supersensuous. You have to understand, it's just divided the whole of consciousness into unconscious, which is the majority of the waking mind, and comes out also in dream. The conscious mind, and conscious mind is the gateway to the unconscious. You can never have an unconscious series of impressions without the conscious mind relaying it and putting its imprint there. And therefore, to conquer the unconscious mind, we can never do it directly. We have to do it through conscious effort. That is yoga. And then there's the superconscious mind. So opening up the Sushumna is equivalent to saying accessing this superconscious area within us. And so we get beyond even the intellect, where reasoning cannot reach. Earlier on, we were reading how there are these three avenues. There is the instinctive mind that is dominant in animals. It's essentially to do with survival. And then we have the rational mind. Of course, the instinctive mind also goes and encompasses, with more sophistication, more opening up, if you will, of consciousness itself, into a kind of mammalian area, which evokes cooperation, love, genetic love, the relational brain, if you will. And then the rational mind, the neocortex of the human being. And then, so we have the instinctive, we have the rational, which is exclusively open to the humans. And we find it in higher mammals also to some extent. And then we have the inspirational mind. And what we call superconsciousness would be this inspirational mind. So to open that Sushumna is the prime objective of the yogi. According to him, along that Sushumna are ranged these centers. Now we have to be very, very in tune with Swami Vivekananda's language. If you challenge me on this, don't blame me. According to the yogis. And if you have a problem with it, please ask the yogis, don't ask me. So according to him, along the Sushumna are ranged these centers, or in more figurative language, these lotuses, as they are called. And the lowest one is at the lower end of the spinal cord and is called Muladhara. The next highest one is called Swadhisthana, and so on, Manipura, and so on. Now, when you study it from the yogic point of view and the yogic description and yogic language, it's not quite as simple as a single thing, because, as I say, there are bija mantras associated with every letter. In other words, there's a whole meditative route to explore the complexity, the depth, and the profound nature of each one of these centers. And so colors are visualized, symbols are visualized, deities are visualized. And part of the visualization is to see that there is a Shivaling and there's a coiled serpent around it. That's why John Woodruff talks about serpent power. And that, in imaginative, figurative language, comes up and can be felt, of course. And sometimes it is felt like a snake, sometimes it's felt like a jumping of a monkey, sometimes it's progressive, sometimes it's sudden. And we have to resort to the mystics to understand the experience of this. Ramakrishna is a good source for this. Anyway, our time is now up, so I hope that has been useful and helpful. And I hope you could all hear. So thanks.
Thank you, Swami.
All right.
Thank
Om
you.
Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you.
Gaurav Mahagat Swami.
Thank you. You have to reply for me also because I forgot.
Tá fáilte rót.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Okay.
Thank
Slán
you.
agus banach.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swamiji.